We are seeing some very interesting changes in economic policies all around the world. So, Japan is massively automating. Hungary is rewarding big families with tax exemptions. South Korea is pouring billions into housing and family incentives. Canada, on the other hand, after extensive efforts to address the problem of population decline through immigration, is now taking a few steps back. All of this comes under the package of the problem of population decline. The changes we're witnessing are fundamental strategies to reshape economies all around the world. This is a problem that's silently rewriting our world, and in this video, we'll explore how different nations are tackling the issue and where their actions might lead us. Countries already knew that population is not something that keeps going up, but the public discourse wasn't really ready for it. And now it seems like it's somewhat of a well accepted truth that global population has a stagnation point. According to the United Nations World Population Prospects 2022, the global population could keep growing until 2080, and then it plateaus at somewhere around 10.4 billion people. On the other hand, a 2020 IHME study in The Lancet suggests that an earlier peak would be at somewhere around 2064. The world's 10 largest economies all have a fertility rate below the replacement level of 2.1. When a country's fertility rate remains below 2.1 without compensating factors like net immigration, the population will decline over time, and it can bring serious economic and social challenges. Having two kids replaces both parents in a family, and it ensures that there's future contributors that can directly support the elderly as well as they pay taxes that funds public services. But if there's only one child, that single individual has double the burden. And if there's no children at all, which is an increasingly common situation these days, that household relies on tax contributions of others while adding no taxpayers of its own. Fewer children also means fewer consumers in the market, which makes domestic spending weaker and weaker. Fundamentally, a smaller workforce is the problem here. It means fewer people to fill jobs and fewer new ideas fueling growth of a country. For countries that rely on consumer spending, like the United States or Japan, fewer shoppers can hurt businesses and reduce tax revenue. This can slow the overall economy in a way that's very hard to rebound from. By keeping a closer balance between retirees and new earners, societies are better able to finance public services. They can maintain strong consumer markets, they can foster an environment of fresh ideas, and if birth rates fall too far, the cycle of fewer workers, shoppers, and innovative voices can become a tough trap for countries to actually escape from. But more than that, an aging and shrinking population can put a very strong hold on cultural and technological innovation as well. Younger generations usually bring fresh ideas, new startups, and they have a willingness to take risks. These are qualities that help a nation stay dynamic and competitive on a global arena. And without enough young people, these creative sparks they start to fade and big economies risk losing edge on the global stage. Canada has been a very interesting case study for the world. In 2015, Canada addressed its problem of population decline by implementing a very ambitious immigration strategies. It brought in more than 2 million new residents over the course of 7 years, primarily under Prime Minister Trudeau. This was higher than any previous period. This approach very quickly filled certain labor gaps, but it also introduced newer challenges in the country. Many people came in with a good amount of money to spend. A lot of houses were bought in big cities, which increased the demand of housing. Lots of jobs were filled, leaving newcomers with fewer opportunities. Most immigration was also centered around certain cities like Vancouver or Toronto, which increased existing housing crisis. There's an enormous demand of housing and limited supply, and you have areas where many people live in single room, many with less hopes of being able to purchase a home in the future, and a sense of pessimism among job seekers. Canada did buy itself some time when it comes to the problem of population decline, but the market was definitely not ready for a sudden change. Japan, on the other hand, is considered to be one of the oldest countries in terms of population. The population peaked in 2010 at about 128 million and is predicted to drop below 100 million by 2050. It's a big economy with hyper-consumerism in certain cities, so the need for workforce is immense in Japan. And Japan is solid when it comes to problem solving. So it's not a surprise they're heavily investing in automation based technology. We can already see this in convenience stores where automated checkouts and robots are becoming the norm. Japan could choose to rely heavily on immigration, but unlike Canada, which is considered to be built by immigrants and has a big sense of diversity even in political systems, Japan is largely homogeneous. The idea of bringing in millions of immigrants every year and compromising their existing value systems to incorporate new ones might not exactly be plan A for Japan. This is the case of any country that's largely homogeneous and has a declining population. It will be interesting to watch how things unfold in these places. Countries with a long standing history of immigration, like the United States, with markets that can provide opportunities for many people, are somewhat in a better position to tackle this issue. But that's not really the case for everyone, even in the West. The European Union is an example of this. It's struggling with this issue as well. They can rely on immigration, but their major cities don't have the right market to sustain everyone. Many European Union countries are pro welfare, where each citizen is somewhat taken care of from childhood to old age through public sector heavily. This is a society that depends a lot on working age taxpayers to support state funded welfare programs. So it always needs enough people in the workforce. But with declining population, that's a struggle. And if you double the number of people coming in to combat this problem, you might suffer the same problems that Canada did. Before we move on, I have been making videos in some time now, and I'm very interested to grow further on this platform. So if you like this video so far, consider subscribing. In general, countries are looking into three major areas of solution. The first are welfare policies. Tokyo will soon introduce a 4-day work week. Hungary is offering big tax breaks and housing support for families. Poland has the Family 500 Plus program to encourage parents to have more children. South Korea introduced baby bonuses and extended parental leave. These measures specifically target low birth rates. I think they can help, but it's not a complete package of a solution. There are many people that choose less children or no children, irrespective of increased state support in raising children. The second solution is automation, and a country that's experimenting a lot on this is Japan. Automation can help compensate labor shortages to a degree on very specific forms of work. But there are a few fundamental issues with this solution in general. Firstly, the world of robotics has not yet advanced to a level where it can significantly reduce the need for a large workforce. While this may become a favorable option in the distant future, currently, or even maybe in the next 5 years, robots lack the competence to handle dynamic environments at a human equivalent level. The moment you introduce the need to interact with humans or work in an environment that's very dynamic, you will see massive struggles. And we don't have a commercial robot as an example that can effectively multitask at the same level as humans while interacting with the physical environment. So there's still a long way for this entire field to go. The second problem is that automation in general can be very expensive. Creating customized infrastructure with extensive interactive capabilities has not yet been mastered, or at least on a commercial level. A few institutions have implemented automated systems that serve their purpose well, but the cost of R&D, the technology itself, maintenance, operation, which also requires highly skilled individuals, the cost just stacks up to be enormous. And hiring people instead can be somewhat a much better economic option. In the future, I still think it's likely that automation will be a very big part of tackling the problems of labor shortages. It might be significant now as well in countries like Korea and Japan, but we're not there yet when technology can single handedly compensate for all gaps of labor shortages. So, the assumption that automation is a big fix for the problem of population decline wouldn't really be true, or at least not right now. The last one is immigration, still proven to be the most effective. European Union, Canada, United States are good examples for this. Large-scale immigration can come with its own dissatisfaction, both socially as well as economically. But specifically when it comes to filling in the gaps, it works better than any other alternatives right now, which is why big economies are continuing with immigration programs as a fundamental solution, and several Asian countries have adopted to more immigration every passing year than before. But once again, countries don't want to depend on it. Therefore, they're prioritizing plans to increase birth rates internally. And on the other hand, immigration takes people from one part of the world to the other. It doesn't exactly increase the overall birth rates all around the world. It's not an antidote to global population decline. It's simply a coping mechanism for some economies. But once again, even for big economies, it isn't side effect free. If they had a strong enough choice, this wouldn't be their plan A. If you were to think of consequences at its absolute extreme, the worst case scenario, you might look at a collapse of population and therefore a collapse in economy. I don't think this is likely, but if it were to be, it would include very few workers, pension systems failing overnight. Governments might go bankrupt trying to keep up with healthcare and social services for a rapidly aging population. Businesses would struggle or even shut down because consumer demand just plunges. Innovation might just stall, and entire communities could become ghost towns, and schools and other public services would just close. Once again, I don't think that'll happen. General worst case scenario, which I think is possible and therefore countries are acting upon it, includes a modest drop in population which can shake things up in a country. Schools might merge or close because of fewer students. Local businesses that rely on families, like daycare centers, could just fold up. With fewer people spending money, the local economy can also stagnate. The vibe of the community could massively change as well because there aren't enough young folks to drive new innovations or keep cultural events alive. All of this can create a sense of gloom in society and makes it harder to attract newcomers or keep current residents invested. In general, this is a problem. I'm not exactly sure why, still, in many curriculums, it's not exactly taught, even in chapters within the topic of population. But hopefully, in the future, it will get better. We can expect to see newer economic and social policies, especially in big economies, to combat this problem in the future. So I think it'll be interesting to watch and to see how they plan ahead.